Good afternoon, everybody. It's April 9, 2025. Hope everybody's doing well today. I'm going to record my West Virginia horror story, part 5, Deborah Florian. And as you know, that we've got a series of real estate mobbing videos that Deborah has encountered. You know, not every targeted person lives in an apartment. Many targeted people actually own homes and properties and stuff. You know, whether they're big or small or whatever. I mean, there are, myriad of places to live across the country. So some people choose to live in an apartment. Others choose to live in a home. And Deborah has been fortunate to live in many homes. And she has documented her story as a targeted person now in part 5. So I'm going to read part 5. But before I do, please remember to hit the thumbs up. It helps the channel grow, get the message out there, and it helps other targeted people realize that they're not alone, that this is happening to other women and men, particularly women across the country. So actually, the Institute for Justice today is working on a lawsuit for a couple that's experiencing exactly what I'm experiencing here. So I'm really looking forward to the fact that they filed a lawsuit about the constitutional rights of trespassing, the open field doctrine and stuff like that, where people think that they can walk all over your property, vandalize it, trespass it, or whatever. So I'm looking forward to following this lawsuit. So now let's get back to Deborah. On May 27, 2011, I purchased 48 Sloaniker Lane in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia for $23,900. The closing took place at the law office of Charles Trump on, I guess there's no relationship, right? Charles Trump on Washington Street in Berkeley Springs. It was the Friday afternoon before the Memorial Day weekend, but Charles was very accommodating, spending time telling some of the history of the house's previous owner. He was surprised that I had called his office the day prior to get the final sum for the transaction, as it would of course be a cash deal. No well, no heating system in the 100-year floodplain. Okay? My agent had advised me to make the call before obtaining the money order. I asked him, doesn't everyone make that call with a cash deal? He looked directly at me and answered, quote unquote, no. I felt Charles was assessing me. But it was not at all unpleasant. He's extremely intelligent and knowledgeable as to local history. He went on to be elected West Virginia State Senator in 2014, then Justice of West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals in November 2024. I am sure Charles Trump's assessment of me that beautiful May afternoon is part of my case. In order to tell the rest of my story so that confusion is minimal, I will state that I had been mailing updates, written letters to individuals in federal law enforcement. I had become aware of him on the Shannondale and Beyond, quote-unquote, message board back in 2009 when I was still on the mountain in Jefferson County. At that time, he was living in Shannondale, a community close by, also on the mountain. His identity will remain anonymous here. He is now retired and living a completely different life, very far away. But for years, I kept him in the know as to what was going on. He was the only person who listened. Oh, well, you're so fortunate you had at least one person. I spent the summer of 2011 cleaning the house at 48 Sloaniker, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Sloaniker Lane in the village of Sir John's Run in Morgan County, West Virginia. It hadn't been lived in for years, and it showed. It was an excellent workout, though. My connection to that property was intensely physical, hard work, the kind where I was drenched in sweat. Then I'd go sit on the L-shaped porch, cold drink in hand, feel the breeze under the trees, listening to the water gurgling in Sir John's Run, which was very close to the house. The source of water was close to the house. No, I didn't drink it. I take plastic jugs to the park in Berkeley Springs, where there's a public water station. Delicious, sparkling, clear water. On Saturday of Labor Day weekend, I awoke in the cabin in Pennsylvania. Something was wrong with the electricity. I wasn't about to call an electrician on a holiday weekend when I owned another house. It was raining cats and dogs, a huge front of drenching rain. But I made several trips with necessities and my animals, 3 dogs and 3 cats. I did it all by myself, packing my Dodge Dakota to its roof. When I drove to Sir John's Run on the last trip in, there were turtles everywhere, torrents of water. I slept on the floor that night. I was 52 and up to the challenge. I listed that cabin in Fayetteville, Pennsylvania as a handyman special, strictly quote-unquote as is. It did not sell quickly, despite the new roof and gorgeous deck I invested in. It finally sold for around $16,000, a total financial disaster. What had happened at 17 Rocky Trail in Hedgesville was heavy on my mind, as I simultaneously reveled in the splendor surrounding me on Sloniker Lane. The view out that large bay window in the kitchen was stunning. Greenery everywhere, a large stand of bamboo to the rear of the property, back to where the old low water bridge had been. But that bridge had been demolished and a new one constructed at the other end of the house, becoming part of Sloniker Lane. And what looked to an uninformed bystander to be my property's driveway was actually the old, now unmaintained state road that connected to the now demolished low water bridge. And the ownership of that former state road was now vigorously claimed by Dean Carpenter, a lifelong resident and owner of many tracts of property in Sir John's Run. But the significance of the juxtaposition of the bridges and that old former state road and Dean hadn't come into play yet. Oh, this is getting juicy. Oh my goodness, these small towns, boy. I began making phone calls to the Morgan County Courthouse requesting the transcript of quote-unquote Gene's trial, which took place there in May of 2009. While my request was treated pleasantly, it got nowhere, and I made several calls. So I just went there, a 10-minute drive from my house, and what I was able to do was to pursue, literally, all of the pre-trial discovery. Peruse. The woman who kept these documents under lock and key at first tried to dissuade me, as though it would just be so much work. But I showed them my driver's license, got my yellow legal pad out, and I sat down at the work table. I returned several times. There was a lot of information, and I recall individuals of significance passing by, looking as if I was sorting through all the paperwork. I'm sure they were thinking, there's that damn Deb Florian. But the perspective I gained from the pre-trial discovery would not have been revealed in the transcript of the trial, not by a long shot. There were interviews between the insurance investigator and residents of Sleepy Hollow. The general consensus was he was the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type, really nice until he really wasn't. Gene's tongue evidently became loose when he drank, which was often, and bragged about plans that he should not have publicized. And there was the interview between the insurance investigator and Gene's stepson, the beautiful young man in the wife-beater t-shirt, who I witnessed standing stock still on the porch of the A-frame shed in my yard on Rocky Trail during the historic snowstorm of February 2010 wearing the wife beater tee. The interview between the investigator and this young man took place in spring of 2007. By August 2008, he was not with us anymore. He passed away. Okay? As 2012 progressed, the elections were drawing closer. I was developing an identity at that house with all its history, the natural beauty of the lands. My dogs loved the fenced portion of the yard off the kitchen door, and 2 of my cats roamed free with practically no vehicles to harm them. I had some work done by a local guy who knew his stuff and didn't rip me off. I attended a rally in support of Larry Bradley, the Democrat running for sheriff of Morgan County against the incumbent Republican Vince Shambaugh. Larry seemed to like the way I spoke. He got me on board his campaign to make calls to Morgan County residents supporting his candidacy. Larry was a former West Virginia state trooper, and he really was, and probably still is, a popular person in Morgan. But we lost, and Vince Shambaugh won. To refresh your memory, Vince Shambaugh was the sheriff during the time that I lived on Rocky Trail. He's the guy that I tried to contact, but to no avail. That's usually, they're really guilty when you can't get hold of them. Right around this time, Dean Carpenter would be driving by. Dean, who had substantial property in Sir John's and who, I had learned, had an interest in my property but didn't intend to purchase it. Oh, this is starting to sound a little familiar. He was always pleasant to me, except for a rough patch in the beginning. He did have a persona to maintain. I saw him as the patriarch at Sir John's. He had worked in Washington, D.C., but my sense was his job was not what he projected. Dean was happiest working in his extensive gardens, visible from the window over my kitchen sink on the other side of the run. On the other side of the run. One day, as we sat on the rear stoop chatting, I noticed a subtle change in his attitude. He made a snide comment to the effect of, Vince Shambaugh using zip ties on me. Do you hear that? He made a snide comment to the effect of Vince Shambaugh using zip ties on me. And he alluded to being related to Vince's wife, which was certainly possible. All these people were born, raised, and still live in Morgan County. Of course, it could have also been just talk. But either way, I realized that things were changing and not for the better. To be continued. So now this is part 5. Oh, Deb, oh my goodness, the plot thickens here, right? You know, everybody who they all live in the same town, born, raised, and still live there. That means all their DNA is interchangeable. There's no the gene pool has slimmed down. Let's put it that way. Before I get mean and nasty about it, you know. But thank you so much for your West Virginia horror story, part 5, Deborah Florian. Who now I'm losing track of all of these properties. This is property 4 or property 5. Oh my goodness. I mean, you certainly purchased more properties than I have in my lifetime. Or maybe, I don't know. Maybe we're about even at this point. But thank you so much. This is really interesting, especially because it appears as if wherever you move, whatever property you purchase appears to be tied to some political person, some real estate person, and that you're buying some of these depressed properties. It appears as if this is all contrived, like it's all set up. And then you have to wonder what the underlying dynamic is. Like, why? Why wouldn't people want to elevate the status of their neighborhood by increasing the value of their properties. I mean, generally, increasing the value of property keeps the riffraff out. Okay, so it may increase your property taxes a little bit, but when you're living in a community where the property taxes are so low anyway, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything unless you have a huge house. I mean, it appears like here, the property taxes are more aligned with the square footage of your residence than the total acreage of your property. That's what it appears to me. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing part 5 of your West Virginia horror story. I'm looking forward to reading part 6. And thank you so much for sharing this with the public, because there are so many people out there that are experiencing these horrors with their properties, moving into small, beautiful towns, and then encountering all of these problems. And, you know, it makes you wonder, like, why aren't more people living there? Why did it cost so low? And again, you know, when property values elevate, the quality of the people usually elevate because, you know, let's face it, you know, it takes a certain amount of money to pay for a property, upkeep it, etc., etc. And then, of course, the home improvements you made, despite the fact that you installed a new roof and a gorgeous deck, I mean, this cumulatively has got to be at least $10,000, $12,000, $15,000, right? I mean, I don't know the size, square footage of that residence, but a roof and a deck are huge investments. And to sell for $16,000 is total financial loss. So I'm so sorry to hear that. You keep losing money in these properties. But anyway, thank you for sharing this. Please remember to hit the thumbs up, share if you're inclined to do so, because there are people out there that are experiencing the same thing. And this should not be happening. And generally, when this happens, there's an underlying dynamic in the community that's perpetuating these types of sales. A lot of corruption, small town corruption. But anyway, I hope you're having a good day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.